that. And now what I'm going to do, what I'm going to do right now, since you still got another 20 minutes, see that little microphone in there? Click it. Now you're muted. And then they can hear you. Now you're not muted.
Okay.
Click it.
Hello, Council.
Councilman Brown, how are you?
How are you, Councilor?
I'm fine, sir. You are gonna be able to join us on the September 22nd, aren't you?
Yeah. It's a Friday.
It's a Thursday,
Thursday.
Tuesday. This is a special mediation. You got that? You didn't get the email I sent you?
Yeah, I got it. I put it on my calendar already, but I know initially when we talked about it,
On a Friday.
Friday, yeah.
We could do your deposition if this mediation works out, might not have to take your deposition.
Okay, gotcha.
You know Judge Gergel?
I don't think I've ever met him. I know of him.
Oh.
He's a fine judge. He's
Well,
highly respected.
he must like you because he wanted you at that mediation. So
Yeah, well, guess we gotta get it resolved one way or another, you know.
Yep.
Everybody that goes to court has a right to go to court. That doesn't say whether they're wrong or right.
Well, this one is, this will be interesting, but anyhow, you'll enjoy it, I promise you. So,
Incidentally, who's his attorneys?
some guy out of, Columbia, and, you remember Walter Mika used to practice here? Walter was retired from the, Navy, I believe, and he was in practice with Dave Devane and Ben Mack. And
Oh, yeah,
Walter,
yeah, right there on Main Street.
yeah, and Walter's daughter went, Ashley Amika went to law school, and she joined the firm, and things didn't work out, I guess. So Walter and his daughter went down to North Charleston, and now Walter's down teaching Bible or something down in Mexico, and Ashley is she's just sort of running wild with these cases. I don't know why she got involved in this, but
Yeah, well,
after spending a day of mediation with her, I sort of understand it. But anyhow,
yeah. Well, you know, hopefully it'll be resolved in the town's best interest.
well, what we need to do is just have a good faith mediation and try and mediate a settlement that, but when we went to it before, their idea of mediating was we give them everything they wanted and then it would be a successful mediation. Well, that ain't gonna happen. So,
Yeah, well, I understand, you know, whatever he gets out of it, I'm sure they're gonna have it all over the media as a victory against the town for racial discrimination, you know, so.
no.
If you give him $10, they're gonna say that's proof that the town was racially discriminatory.
No. You know, I sure hope, Lewis doesn't get involved in the mediation.
I'm sure he'll be back behind the scenes somewhere.
Well, he's sort of taking a low profile. Well, no, I take that back.
Are we talking confidentially, just you and me?
Lynn is muted, Russ is muted, and I don't see anybody in.
Okay, well, one of my concerns about Lewis, and I've spoken to John Rogers about it.
Hold on just 1 second. He's not up on the.
It's on the website.
But I can talk to you
Yeah,
about it.
we on the website, so
Yeah, we'll talk about it, but anyway.
we'll talk about it
I'll
later.
talk to you before the 22nd.
All right,
As a matter of fact, I may just call you tomorrow.
all right.
I see Beth. I saw her for a second and then she took her picture off the screen and put up her emoji there. See, Russ is muted. Everybody's muted.
Anticipate that was a big point overall. We're starting to get a little bit better feeling on the baseline and kind of the best points, well constructed for people to get the ball. There's still a very good point from Bruce.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, thank you. Bye.
And get more people.
Well,
Yeah, that'll. Yeah.
And that was earlier. That was earlier. What do you mean?
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Bob.
Hey,
Hello, hello, how's everybody?
hey, Aaron.
How you doing, Aaron?
Doing pretty good.
How do you think I get this moved over so I can get to my mute thing? Well, it looks like I'm unmuted.
Now click on it again and you see it.
Bob,
We
can you hear me?
GW. Hello.
Hello, thank you very much. I thought I was on mute, but evidently I'm not now, so good.
No, we faces are moving.
Not a bad idea, but really good shot from that position. She caught it pretty low, but really good depth on that approach shot.
Not too, I think even I could keep up with that.
Do you need me to pull anything for you for that?
No.
Got everything up there.
Headed on, I will see you in the morning.
Okay.
I don't have a staff meeting, so, but I'll be here normal time anyhow.
Okay, I'll see you then.
All right, drive careful, stay safe.
You know, there's a speck on the left lens there.
You think it is?
Yeah, I
Here,
can see it.
here, would you get it for me?
Yeah. You found that.
I just happened to look at them. I said, I can't even see through those things.
You need to get a pair of those rose-colored ones.
I could use some of those. You know, I read somewhere, some lens I had, it said you were supposed to use industrial pure alcohol. And you can't, I went to drugstores, I could never find any. And then all of a sudden it hit me, well, Everclear green alcohol is like 195%. I said, that's close enough. So these were really dirty, so I was spraying them with, and I use it to disinfect my hands too, so. It makes a good hand disinfectant and eyeglass cleaner.
When that last game, but I feel like even when we first started to the level in that last game, we responded well and just the numbers. I think the biggest thing was the unforced errors from that first bracket team. Well, but and they just handling her service a little bit better, getting a bigger percentage when she's gotten that first serve in. Here, girlie.
That was in the hole.
That's a bad start. 458. 458. 458.
This is a special meeting.
Whether they've been in Orlando or not, they really practice matches with each other. So we've just been nice for each other. Her strategy has changed. She's trying not to stay on the ground as much as possible. She's been so successful at the net, so she's really hoping to come forward as quickly as possible.
So we wait on the bell.
Hello?
Oh, you mean that one?
Yeah.
Hey, Russ. Hello.
The bell is late.
All right.
If my lips are moving and you're not hearing me, remind me that I put myself on mute. Or don't say anything and just act like you're listening attentively.
Good evening, everybody.
Good
Welcome
evening.
now.
Good
welcome
evening.
now- Welcome now, special call meeting. At this time, I'd like to call the meeting to order. And Madeline, am I supposed to turn the meeting over to you at this time?
Sure. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for agreeing to this special council meeting. This for the presentation of our consultant to give to y'all the status and options, design options for the proposed wayfinding signage program the town has decided to look into. And with us tonight is John Bozio. He is with Merge Design, and that is our consultant for this project. They have been doing a lot of work in learning about the town, learning where our destination points are throughout the town, coming off of the interstate into town and all the way out to the Ashley River, and how we can direct more folks to come into town and help them throughout town a little easier when they're here visiting, because we want them to leave their dollars in our restaurants and hotels.
I had no doubt in my mind that she was gonna start playing.
Oh, sorry, I thought I heard somebody. So I am going to turn it over to John and let him begin the presentation.
Do I share my screen? Presentation.
Yeah, you can share your screen. It should be enabled. There you go.
So thank you, everybody, for having me here today. I'm going to give you sort of a summary presentation of the wayfinding program. It's in two parts. The first part is just to give you an overview of some of the wayfinding analysis that we've done for Somerville and some of the issues that we looked at. And the main part of the presentation really is to look at the design options that we presented to the stakeholders, where we are in that process, and get your feedback so that we can move on to some of the more detailed next steps. I always like to start the presentation to just talk a little bit about wayfinding and the wayfinding that's out there in Somerville. It's not wayfinding. What I like to say is wayfinding is not new. There are wayfinding signs out there, and you can see they're out there with, all different sizes and shapes and colors and configurations. And what this program looks to do is bring some consistency to that, build some identity for Somerville, as well as declutter. Try to organize this. Right now you have signs. What we're trying to do is have a sign system. As we've gone through the analysis, while we're going to talk a lot about signs today, the analysis looks more holistically. So, from the moment you decide to come to Somerville, what kind of information do you get on on your website? Is there a mobile app, or is there a digital strategy that can be included within this overall plan from a wayfinding standpoint? And then how does the environment affect your ability to find your way? Are there landmarks like the giant sweet tea, that people use to identify where they are? And then support information, things that the brochures and maps, things you would pick up at the visitor center. How does all that tie together along with the signage to create basically one voice? A big part of this has been to incorporate the Somerville brand, and at what level do we bring that into the program? And we'll talk a little bit about that when we get into the design. If you think about wayfinding, you can think about it as big picture in. So you arrive to Somerville. At what point are you do you identify that you have hit that point of arrival and you welcome people to Somerville? You have some of those existing gateway signs that are out there now, and then you have some standard DOT green and white signs. This would look to unify all of those entrances into the town. And we've started to look at where those entrances may be, and where, where is your WOW gateway? And then where are gateways that might be secondary or tertiary, where you're just trying to mark, a transition point. Coming into downtown, there's this little sign up around 5th Street. You have the existing great gateway as you come into the historic downtown. That obviously would stay as is. We've been working with the steering committee on what destination should be included, and have come up with, we started to map that out and then just come up with a list. Community wayfinding is really limited to nonprofit entities. So we're talking about visitor services, government facilities, parks and rec, historic sites, those types of elements. We also are talking about districts, and I'll talk about that in a moment, but identifying the various districts in Somerville. So, one of the things about Somerville is it's really large. And we want people to identify that they are still in Somerville, no matter if they're up all the way at the northern end or all the way down, say, Colonial Dorchester. As you make your way around, sort of unifying the overall town is an important part of this. But we also want to identify the various districts. And this was a lot of conversation we had with the stakeholders. So these are the districts that we've identified. We are not looking to, although we have color coded them here, in the sign design, we're not color coding. It's too many colors, and I think it breaks up the town a little bit too much. Our goal is to unify it so that you understand that no matter where you are still in Somerville. We are looking at parking, especially in the downtown, and how to identify that, and you'll see that in the signage design. I think identifying that it's making it really clear that it's free public parking. That's a real good asset that Somerville has. I mean, we work with a lot of towns, and promoting free parking is important. And then this is just a generic menu of sign types, so we sort of get an idea of the types of elements that may be needed in Somerville. So at top, again, big picture and gateway signs that welcome you to the town, whether that's some sort of WOW gateway or just a marker that lets you know you've transitioned. Vehicular signs, larger, higher speed signs that are probably more on the outside. And then as you get into the historic downtown, they come down in scale. Getting people to parking, maybe identifying the parks and having a consistent sign program for the parks, pedestrian elements, trail elements. All of these things can be part of the system. We are still, and we'll talk about that towards the end, sort of, what are your priorities? What are your budgets? And we'll work through, it's not that you have to do all of these things. This is sort of a master plan, and then you decide which ones you're going to do. We've been working through schematic designs. We first developed 3 schematic designs that we showed to a variety of groups and got feedback from them, and we'll have that list in a moment. And then have landed on a final design option, which we're looking to get comments on as well. So our first option really looked to the Somerville brand. I would say this is probably the brand heavy version, where we have brought in the colors from the identity, but then we also brought in some different materials, an identification for parking, pedestrian signs, and kiosks. Having the name of the district that you're in at the bottom, and having the logo at the top in color. We also had some ideas where you have some artistic elements in maybe in the ground that maybe is the base of the kiosk. The second option was based more on sort of the architecture of more traditional architecture of Somerville. The logo is at the top, sort of notched out of the metal with the name of the district. Kiosks with a canopy, sort of ornamental canopy as part of it. More traditional posts, a more traditional sign shape. And option 3 was much more colorful. So we did try to push these in different directions to try and get comments from everybody. And we had some different options here for the shape of the sign, if it's cut out, and even the color. So this one brings in the color of the logo as well. Still at a pretty strong level, not as much as the first. Again, parking signs, pedestrian elements. So these three designs were presented to a variety of stakeholder groups. I think some town council members were part of that, town staff, tourism, the chamber. We met with DOT, as well as a variety of other stakeholders. The public was invited to participate as well. So we had a survey that was online where we got feedback. And in July, we had a presentation to the BAR and CDRB for their comments. And based on those comments, option 1 was sort of chosen as a basis for design. So that was the one that everyone seemed to gravitate towards, but there were elements of options 2 and 3 that people preferred. So from a color standpoint, option 1, those softer colors were preferred. Using a universal blue for parking was preferred. And the green, they felt like the green panels blended in too much to the environment and some adjustments. We also brought in materials from option 1, and they like to use a brick from option 3. The arch detail from option 1 was preferred, as well as the finials. And they like the cutout metal canopy from the kiosk. So we tried to bring in, build consensus among those groups of the things that people liked or didn't like, and bring that into a final design. So this is where we are with design currently. This is design option 4, which brings in those elements. Again, design option 1 was used as a basis for design, but we've sort of brought back the amount of color that was in the designs. I think that was something that was a little bit too colorful for the groups, but we did bring in just an accent. I'll just zoom in there. The identity colors are more of an accent in this system, and the overall design is based more on architectural features and neutral colors that will help it sort of sit with the environment, but the accents of color will help it pop. Just jump back at the logo will be basically punched out of the metal, so it'll be cut out as an element there. So again, it's there, but it's quiet, but still recognizes wherever you go in Somerville, you will see that with the identification of the district that you're in. Parking signs, again, using sort of the blue as a recognizable and promoting free public parking, pedestrian elements, and then a kiosk with a canopy. You'll see the mix of materials, probably the most in this sign, where we have brick that was preferred from option 3. The wood, we're looking at different ways to do the wood. I don't know that they will be actual wood. There are some materials and processes now that we can do that out of aluminum, but it will look like wood. And we'll be presenting that as we move through the process. The kiosk will have a map of downtown in this case. It could have an interpretive panel and tell about the history of Somerville and broaden out your story a little bit more. Banners could be part of this design. And then people really like that idea of sort of artistic element as part of the wayfinding, either as leading you from one thing to another, but probably more likely as something in the ground that surrounds the base of the kiosk line that can bring in some sort of local artistic element to the program. So that's a quick summary of the project and where we are with the design. I can certainly go back to any of the designs and answer some questions for you.
I've got a question for you on the 3 initial schematic designs that you pointed out.
Mm-hmm.
On the 3rd one, can you go back to that? Yeah. Now, this jumps out at me as much more attractive and appealing and attention getting if someone is looking for a sign to show them a way. The gray is very, very vanilla. And I know we're dealing with signs and not crayons, but this is very appealing to me. I don't know how the rest of the council feels, but it just seems to me it's much more attractive and it's more alive, like the town's alive, whereas the gray just looks like, you know, we're an old fuddy-duddy town.
I agree with Aaron that I think something needs to be done with the color. I'm not really sure where the branded colors came from or whether or not they were ever approved by council. I don't recall that ever happening. The traditional Somerville colors are green and gold.
Exactly.
I prefer to see that color scheme incorporated in the sign. As far as the style of the signs, I think they're great. No problem there. My issue is with the color, and I think green and gold is all we've got to sell is tradition and history. And the other thing I have a problem with is the logo. And again, I don't recall council ever approving that as the town's logo. I know that somebody had some staff member had purchased the copyright for, I believe, $10,000 a while back. Again, this was something that was, to my knowledge, ever approved by council. But to me, you have to explain to me what the logo is before I can see the S and the flower around it. I think something, you know, like a pine cone or something more reflective of Somerville. These signs could be anywhere, and I think something needs to be distinctive. I want to keep Somerville, and I don't think the color scheme or the logo does that.
I agree with Walter on that too, the logo. I think the logo can be much more attractive. Maybe a pine cone or something that reflects what is Somerville. We're supposed to be, the pine has always been sacred or something like that.
The logo, go ahead, Madeline.
Well, this logo, it was the chamber that brought this to us several years back, and they showed us this design, a couple others. They recommended this particular design, and we did vote on this. The reason I remember this is it was only about a year or two after I was with Dorchester Leadership that year. And at that point, you know, we were doing the rebranding of the Sweet Tea, you know, his home of Sweet Tea and things like that. So we did vote on this and agreed with the chamber that we liked this design. And Walter, if you can look, there's an S in the middle. And
I got it.
And then the little flowers that go around it. Now the colors, we didn't really, at that time, we just voted on the logo and we really didn't talk about the colors. I like the colors. I could go with a change slightly, but I just really feel that our colors should go with Flower Town and the Pines, something that is more, that goes with that theme, you know, a wooded look and everything. I don't want to go with the bright colors that Somerville High School has, because I think we're separate than Somerville High School. I think we can go with a light yellow and we can go with a light green to blend into our signs. Also on the signs, I have a question. I'm assuming that all of the wording on these are going to be that type that it shines up in the nighttime and you're going to see it really, really well.
Correct.
You mean reflective?
Yes, exactly.
Right. So the signs are required, the vehicular signs are required to be retroreflective and they're high intensity vinyl. So yes, they are reflective.
Okay.
Going back to the logo, if I might again, I recall the chamber bringing that to us. I did not know it was going to be accepted as an official logo and put on every sign in town. I thought that was a chamber thing. For whatever reason, the town paid for the copyright, and but again, with the approval by council, I don't believe.
If I can address this.
I didn't know we were changing the name of the town or the town slogan from Flower Town and the Pines to In the Heart of It All. I didn't know we were officially adopting this logo, and I didn't know we'd adopted branding colors. I think branding is, and I think our consultant might have mentioned this at first, that it was he wanted to build some identity for Somerville. Somerville already has an identity. We're not grasping around trying to figure out who we are. And I think we need to honor our past. All we've got is tradition and history, and that's what our brand needs to be, in my opinion.
I agree with you on that. I think the chamber design with the S in it is attractive, but it just doesn't. It looks like we are reinventing Somerville as opposed to it being what was already there, the brand we already had.
Let me address sort of the conversations with the color and the branding that went on as part of this process. Again, we didn't design the logo. It was there. You guys were using it.
Yeah, I understand. Sure. Yeah.
So when we did the design, and that was purposeful to sort of address some of the questions and comments that you had, that there was one where we said, okay, let's do a design where it's really sort of out front there. And that's what this was. And then we did another one where it really doesn't have those colors. We are using the logo as sort of a quiet way in this one. So that's sort of the other end of the spectrum of it. There were lots of conversations regarding those colors when we went through these original three, and how we landed on where we were was that the groups did not want those colors to be out front like in that first option. So while they liked the first option with the materials and some of the other configurations, you can see we've only brought those colors in as small accents to it. Now, if we want to change the background panel from gray to another color, that's, we can totally work with that. But we did sort of step back from that really big brand push or identity push that you saw in option one, where those colors are really strong, to here where they're only used as an accent and the logo itself is punched out. So in reality, that will be quiet as well. So that's how we sort of addressed both of those comments, where some groups wanting the logo to be strong and some wanting it to be quiet. We felt like this was a good sort of blend of the two by just using accent colors.
My issue is not with how you present the logo, it's with the logo itself.
And to piggyback on what Councilman Bailey was saying, the one thing that really jumped out at me, was the use, and I think it's used at least one of these presentations. I might be mistaken, but at least something had the slogan at the heart of it all. And that I don't mind that slogan for a current tourism campaign, visitor campaign, which the Chamber of Commerce does for us and does a very good job. And the logo itself, I think that what Councilman Bailey and Councilman Gordon Schmidt have both said, I think the reality is somewhere real close to what they're saying. But the logo did come to us from the Chamber of Commerce that does tourism promotion for us. And all that to say, my concern is this: if we spend the kind of money that these signs would require, I hope that they're going to be there for 10, 20, maybe more years. And tourism campaigns are going to come and go. And in the 9 years I've been on council, we've used the Chamber of Commerce. We've left the Chamber of Commerce and used another consulting company. We've come back to the Chamber of Commerce. We've had 2, 3, maybe even 4 different completely distinct tourism programs, tourism promotions. I don't think if we're ever going to spend the kind of money that these signs would require, it should be completely distinct from a Chamber of Commerce or anybody else's tourism promotion platform and program, and should really focus on the traditional iconic parts of Somerville, which is Flower Town and the Pond.
So, Council, could I ask you, when you're looking at the, if we take away kind of, I don't know how to start with this. So instead of using that S logo, some of you guys have mentioned the pine cones. Unfortunately, I don't know that pine cones are going to translate well in that medium either. What if we tried to do, in the cutout version, tried to do maybe a pine tree like our logo? And then the other comment that I had that I wanted you guys to think about on, I think, option 3, there's a green in there. What if we use that green as the background, but still on this last, that green.
The darker green.
Yeah, the darker green. And then if you go to the, the one where their final suggestion with the having some wood color, the wrought iron color with the arch on the top, which pays homage to the arch in downtown in Hutchinson Square. Have the green, and instead of the S, maybe a pine tree. I just don't know if they can cut that out and make it look like a pine tree, but it's an option. How do y'all feel about kind of that?
I think the pine tree would be fine. I'd like to see it first, but I think it's a great idea.
I've still got Rebecca, I still got a problem with the gray. I just don't think the gray.
Well, instead of the gray, use green. So your background would be dark green.
That's a lie. You just got my attention with that.
Yeah, I also think that dark green background would look nice.
So maybe dark green background, white letters, the wrought iron and the pine wood colored accent, and then the arch at the top. And maybe if we can try to put a pine tree instead of the S, see how that would look cut out.
Yeah, we can come up with some different graphics to give you options for that.
Yeah.
What's the color at the top? If I look at that Jessen Boat Landing sign, what's the color at the top of that?
Is the light green is from the logo. It's sort of a
pinkish.
Yeah,
salmon-y.
There's a salmon green. Yeah, the pink is more of a salmon color.
Yeah, salmon, right? Yeah. Which doesn't seem to get it.
I kind of also like the signs that had the little stripe with what area of town it is. Because I know me for a long time didn't know what Bryant'sville was or.
Yeah, so we'll include sort of a stripe there as to, what district you're in. We also did that here where.
Yeah.
I guess the purpose of the question of asking what was that color is if I think of colors myself in Somerville, I would kind of think 4, and salmon ain't one of them. But
yeah, right.
Yeah,
I agree with you on that. Yeah.
We've got the dark green, which I think is fine. Instead of the lighter green, I'm not sure why we wouldn't go with a gold. And the other colors that fall in there for us, I mean, the green is with pine trees, but the colors of azaleas in Somerville are generally white, and I'm going to call it more of, well, I'm not good with those kind of colors, but it's not
fancy
salmon,
color.
more of a
red.
reddish pink.
White and red. White, red,
Yeah.
and sort of pinkish.
Yeah, I think if you did the green and more of a darker red, less than, not salmon, and see what they could come up with. They kind of go through the color wheel and figure out which shades work together. So if you did that dark green, a darker red, and figure out what shade of will go with it. That's not my forte either. Sorry.
we'll do color. We'll bring back some color studies and some options for the graphic at the top.
Well,
you-
I like option 3, Southern Charm. There's some things we need to do, changes, but Southern Charms to me speaks more to what Somerville really is. So if we could work on that, yeah.
If the configuration at the top is supposed to represent the arch, could we get it to look more like the shape of the arch?
I think the arch in the last one works a little bit better from like what we've actually got downtown.
Yeah, it comes closer, but yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think that would.
We're gonna stick with, again, we're always looking just for a basis for design. So option 4, as far as configuration, materials and those sort of things. Look at the background color to a dark green. Look at adjusting some of the other colors, and then look at the graphic that's at the top of the sign, as well as, making sure we have that inclusion of the district or area of Somerville that you're in. We want to make sure that there is an identity for the town and that the district doesn't sort of give you a mixed message as you left Somerville.
Not be able to convert on those couple breakpoint chances. Just trying to talk about, curious to see how she would recruit.
It's very interesting. I think overall we're moving in the right direction, but we just need to remember what Somerville was for years and years.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. And the other thing, the free parking, the only thought I would give there is actually, there's nothing but free parking in Somerville. There's nowhere that you pay to park that I'm aware of. I would want to make sure that, I'd want us to think about the parking garage per se, or garages, because they may or may not be free parking.
Particularly if the sign's going to last a while. It is currently free in the garages. But that can change.
It's free on Little Main. It's free on, all of the streets. So, but I wouldn't want to identify the parking garage as the free parking area, because at some point that will change. May not be this council, but it will change.
You currently direct to free parking.
Yeah, but I'm getting ready to spend a ton of money to do that now.
Maybe.
Well, if we do any of these designs, we're getting ready to spend a ton of money to do that. And, I wouldn't want to have something up there that forces a future council, including this one, into a position of, well, we spent $100,000 or whatever it is on these signs, and they all say free parking. How are we going to put in a fee for parking in the garage?
Right.
Yeah, I think you could just say public parking, and then it can go wherever we go with that. And John, you probably don't know about any of why this is kind of an issue. Our parking garage now is we're having some security issues with skateboarding and people driving in and out with loud cards and things like that. That's affecting the downtown businesses. So there may be some interest in the future to maybe charge in that parking to cut down on some of that nonsense. So, yeah.
Okay. So our intent is to go back and make these updates, and I guess we'll then come back to the council with those changes to get a final approval.
Can we talk about the mosaic and the sidewalk now?
These aren't the designs. These are just sort of similar ideas.
Okay. Well, I hope ours aren't real similar to that. I mean, that's a little too much.
And where were you thinking about putting that mosaic if we have that?
We were thinking that that is something that could be a nice sort of base around the kiosk, sort of as your standing area. It would be, even if you had like local artists or something like that, we've done that in the past where we've engaged local artists to help us with that portion.
How many kiosks are we talking about? Just one, or are we talking a couple?
I think in the downtown there might be 2. We haven't finalized that, but you're not talking about 12 or anything like that.
Good question,
So
Kim. That
this
was
is-
my question also.
Correct. John,
I wanted to also say, Kimma, the kiosk, we talked about a kiosk potentially out at Gahagan as well, because we have tournaments out there, and you can use the kiosk in different places to advertise the other. It's just a further way of linking different places throughout town.
We talk a lot about cross marketing, so if you're out at the park, talk about downtown and,
Yeah.
using it as a
Madeline, do you think a kiosk would work at Doty Park, since a lot of people use that Doty Park?
Potentially, Amy is actually on this on this Zoom meeting as well, and she's been working with Dorchester County Parks and Recreation, who is also doing a wayfinding signage study for their recreational facilities, and we want to be able to link all of this infrastructure eventually.
Good.
Yeah, imagine out at the Oak Brook Ashley River Preserve also, sending people back downtown to shop and eat, and then people in downtown sending them down to the river, if they're here visiting. Just trying to be able to help people navigate around and see all that we have to offer, whenever they come to visit.
Yeah, on the mosaics, I think we ought to omit that altogether. I think we're going to a lot of effort to get attractive design for the signs and the kiosk and all that. And I think the mosaic is going to clash with that and kind of take something away from it.
I don't know, Walter. I think it might have some appeal if you don't spend too much money on it.
Got to look a whole lot different than what I'm looking at in the picture, though.
Well, yeah,
but the idea is
that's
you can always look at the design of it, but I look at this as I know it'll be appealing. Something like this will be appealing to some people and maybe not others, like Walter and myself. This particular one, but the other thing is this is not something that has to be done. I mean, we either choose that we want that to be around kiosk, or we choose we don't. Whether or not we have whether or not we like the design or not.
Well, it's certainly an option. I mean, but again, I think it's got some appeal. I've seen them in other cities, and they've got some appeal.
I like them, but I like the idea of this being more around different park areas, more like children's park areas.
Yeah, and you can have that choice too. It doesn't have to go with every single one. There might be some spots where it makes sense and other spots where it doesn't. And then it's up to you to choose to do it or not.
Yeah, I think in the historic district, we should not have them there. But again, like Kim said, around the parks, and that area might be better.
And John, you said 1 or 2 kiosks, and as I sit here and think about places because I know they're probably a more expensive part of it, but it is part of how do we advertise the different areas of town. But I mean, when you look at Ashley River Preserve, or whatever it's called, however we call it now, if we look at Laurel Street Park, we could be there can be more of these than I think we imagining right now, unless Amy is coming up with something different.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I should have been more clear about that. When I was saying one or two, I was speaking of only in downtown. You're right. And we've looked at different locations. You could have another one at the visitor center. You could have one in the various parks. So that number, we are getting into where all the signs go. At this point, we'll probably over-program it and then delete back if necessary. And we'll have conversations with the group. Yeah, but I should have been clear. 2 is more for the downtown.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so they will come up with a map suggesting locations of signs, you know, where different types of those signs can be and where the kiosk could be. And then at that point, it's really just up to council and funding of where we want to start or which ones you want to do or think you don't need. We also are going to work with Public Works and with police department just to make sure we're putting the signs in places that are going to work and not cause problems and things that they've seen that may help us out in our decision and the decision-making process for y'all.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any other questions or concerns? Nope. Okay.
Nope, thanks.
All right, John, thank you for joining us this evening. We greatly appreciate it. And I'll call and touch base with you tomorrow.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
John, John, thanks for being here. Appreciate the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Madeline.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we need to go into executive session. At this time, if I could get a motion.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
I'll second.
A motion made that we go into executive session to discuss legal matters related to condemnation of a drainage easement on property owned by Kenneth Reed. Motion made, and seconded. Any discussion? If not, everybody signify by raising the right hand, saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Give me about 30 seconds, Mayor.
Okay, Lenny.